Well, hi everyone. First, I just want to say thank you so much for your support. The last video actually really blew me away of how much it was supported. Um, I know in the grand scheme of everything, it seems like it's a very small, insignificant drop in the bucket, especially compared to what the big boys are pulling in and whatnot. But to me, starting from nothing, it's a big accomplishment, and I just wanted to say thank you. And it really does mean a lot to me. Both the positive and the negative. I'm okay with it. You could agree, you could disagree, all that you like. That's 100% okay. I think it's kind of weird that people only want to stick around with other people if they agree on 100% of everything all the time, which is a really weird mindset to have, because then we'd all be the same, and well, nothing would really be interesting. Um, but but that being said, I just wanted to let you know that that there are a lot of new viewers, and I guess now is as good a time as any to give some updates and some announcements that are concerning this channel, as well as my intention behind the channel as well. So first of all, I want to say that this channel, especially for all the new, the new viewers who are on here, this channel is not just strictly a history channel. Well, I should say it's strictly an American history channel. I am everything that I do is more or less dedicated to the history of American people, as well as the political atmosphere and I guess hot topics that we face here in the United States. And so I just wanted to let you all know that it's not just going to be history as I see fit. I'm going to bounce around back and forth from the past, into modern day topics as well. Um, and right as of right now, I'm going through the American founding, or rather the biblical roots, the Christian roots of the American founding in this particular series. That's why I use I approach it the way that I am approaching it right now is holding it to a more of a Christian standard, because I feel like a lot of that has been lost, um, to people wanting to eradicate our Christian roots, um, and not really, or just try to gloss over it. And I think it's important, because that is what made us, that is what founded us. Was a lot of these Christian principles, and you may not like it, you may not agree with it, but I think I've shown you plenty of proof, in the previous videos, just showing of how we are indeed a nation founded upon Christian principles. And I think that's important for us to understand and to realize. But again, that being said, let's see. I have my notes, so I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, so this brings me to my second subject here. Um, so for those of you who may not have seen, I don't know if it was a video or two ago, um, concerning the subs that I have. I have, I guess, my subscriber count. I guess that's a better way of putting it. I have a plan in the future that I do want to do some live streams. I have some friends of mine now. I don't misunderstand. I am not, maybe some of them aren't even necessarily my friends, but just people who I know. But the point is that when it comes to these live streams, I wanted to tackle certain subjects, but I didn't want to do it until I at least had 100 subscribers first. But the first topic that I was actually going to hit was fat phobia, the whole issue behind how we've grown complacent and fat, and we want to talk about how being large and in charge is a healthy and a good thing, and it really is not. And so honestly, I have a friend. He's struggled with weight all of his life, and I was going to bring him on, and we're going to talk about his his weight loss journey, a little bit of my own weight loss journey, and how it's helped him and how it's helped me. We'll look at some articles and different things of that nature. Going through of how it is not healthy to be overweight. It really isn't, and so that was something that I had planned for the future. I actually have other things that I wanted to tackle, other subjects that interest me, such as I actually wanted to bring my wife on, in one of these live streams. My wife is not a well. Let me put it this way. My wife is not a natural born American citizen. She came here. I met her overseas, and we got married almost 10 years ago. And I think she has a unique perspective on a lot of the American media. So I kind of wanted to attack, some of this. I don't know how to put it. This garbage that's going on in our American media of how, particularly in the avenue of video games, of how they're making women ugly. My wife, she has a lot of funny takes of how she feels about these poor girls that they hire as face models, and then they butcher them when they release them onto the video games. And so I did want to bring her on as well, and talk to her about her perspective on different things of that. And I do have other things planned for the future, but I just wanted to give you an idea of where I was going to go with all this. And then the last update that I wanted to bring is at the moment right now, including this video, I was going to have three videos left. And again, that's including this one, before I go on break starting in the middle of July. Now, I ask you to please bear with me through this, but please understand something, that this is not my primary job. I do this on the side for fun. I am just a guy on the internet. I don't claim to be some big shot that knows all of American politics or economics or history or anything like that. I just have a very deep interest in our politics and history, and so into economics. I know it's important. I'm trying to learn, but I'm not the especially when it comes to economics, I would never claim that I'm the end all be all or anything of that nature. But that being said, my wife, she's giving birth to our second child in July. I believe the third week of July is what we're scheduled right now, and we'll have two little munchkins, and of course I have a dog as well, and I am going to be very busy. Of course, for those of you who are parents, you'll know that when you have a new little one, that you're a zombie, and and so that's it's a lot of work that I have ahead. But please understand that my wife, my family, my children, they need my attention, they need my help, and I'm going to be sitting this out just for a little bit. My estimated time of return for the next video will actually be September the 1st, after I go on that break in July. But in the meantime, while I am on break, I will be vigorously preparing for the next leg of the journey, because I feel like at least the series that I'm currently in with the Christian roots of America, I feel like that's kind of winding down here, and I'm going to prepare for the next part of the journey. So again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I cannot express it enough of just your support in the last video. I truly was just blown away, and I'm thankful for every single one of my subscribers, and it really does mean a lot to me. And I'm excited to get on to to see what else will come of this. I hope that you will keep supporting me. Oh, and before I forget, for those of you who are new here, I always put the links down in the description below, so that you can go and read everything that I read. So feel free to do that, and that way you can see that I'm not just a crazy person just blowing hot air. So please feel free to check out those links, and I'll catch you guys next time. So anyway, on with the show. A couple videos ago, I briefly mentioned that King Charles I was threatening to revoke some of the charters from the colonies in the New World, and likely was going to act upon his threat. But he had some bigger fish to fry, and that fish came in the form of Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell was born on April 25th, 1599. He was born to Robert and Elizabeth Cromwell. Though the later part of his life was well documented, the first 40 or so years we know very little about him. We know that he was educated at Huntingdon Grammar School and Cambridge University, and that he was a minor landowner through the inheritance his father left for him. His father died in June 1617 when Oliver was just 18 years old. During the time he was taking care of his mother and supporting his 7 sisters until they were married, he married Elizabeth, and together they had 9 children, although it must be noted that only 6 of them made it to adulthood. Oliver, as the only surviving son, ended up caring for his mother for another 37 years after the death of her husband. He later moved to Ely in 1636 by gaining an inheritance of property through his maternal uncle. Guess it pays to take care of your parents. In 1628, Cromwell became a member of Parliament, or an MP, but was still relatively unknown at that time, other than a single speech that he made against the Bishop of Winchester. But the speech did not go over so well. Plus, it was short-lived because in 1629, King Charles dissolved the Parliament, and for the next 11 years he would rule without them. Wonder what could go wrong with that. Well, first, let's back up a bit. What led to the dissolution of the Parliament in the first place, as well as the rapidly declining popularity of Charles I? First of all, the pompous pageantry of the clergy did not go over well with many of the people. Of course, you have to remember who was responsible for giving those men the position they held. It was none other than Charles himself. Second, Charles had begun to go around the common law courts in favor of the infamous Star Court. The Star Court was a court that was directly controlled by the crown. Its original purpose was to administer justice quickly, but of course, if you have one man running the show while your cronies carry out your justice, it's easy to see how something like that could quickly become corrupted. Under Charles, it became a symbol of arbitrary justice and ecclesiastical arrogance. Ben Hart gives great insight into what the court had devolved into. Quote, "Instead, it became an instrument of tyranny, not bound by standard procedures for protecting the rights of the accused. Under the Stuart monarchy, the Star Chamber became the main vehicle for the centralization of royal power and the punishing of political dissidents. Archbishop Laud especially used the Star Chamber ruthlessly to enforce adherence to the rituals of the Anglican Book of Prayer." Obviously, this would not have made Charles popular with the public. Third, his foreign policy was a disaster. In 1625, he launched a naval campaign against the port of Cadiz, which belonged to the Spanish. Ultimately, this campaign ended up in failure, and furthermore, largely due to the incompetence of Buckingham, England ended up in war with France as well. One of the members of the House of Commons said, "Our honor is ruined, our ships are sunk, our men perished, not by the enemy, not by chance, but by those we trust." Fourth, war is expensive. So what do you think the king did? That's right, he started imposing more taxes on people, which again tanked his popularity. In 1626, he tried to raise money without parliament through what was called a forced loan, and had a number of those who refused to pay his new tax imprisoned without trial. In 1628, the House of Commons passed the famous Petition of Right, which declared 4 things: no new taxes without the consent of the Parliament, no imprisonment without cause, no martial law in peacetime, and fourth, no quartering of soldiers in citizens' homes. The Parliament forced Charles I to sign the Petition of Right, but said that he would observe it only if he wanted to, since there would be no doubt about its force as law, since it was granted by his grace and not by right. This led Charles to be high-handed in the appointment of bishops, who, of course, would carry out his will. Keep in mind, at this time, there was no separation of church and state. This outraged some members of the House of Commons, and when Speaker John Finch was ordered by the king to adjourn the House, Finch was held down by 3 members of the Parliament, while the House of Commons passed a number of motions against the king. Charles was outraged at what had taken place, and on the same day he dissolved the Parliament, who would not come back for 11 years. He made it clear to all that it was his divine right or his royal prerogative that allowed him to rule and to raise taxes for war against Spain and France. Fifth, the conditions in the country went from bad to worse. The majority of the Englishmen who stayed behind in England had considered themselves to be Anglican were now being labeled as Puritans, who, by the way, the king loathed. But these Anglicans were being called Puritans just because they opposed the increasing rigidity and the hierarchy of the Church of England. Preaching and praying that were not condoned by the Church of England were outlawed. William Prynne, who was a Protestant dissenter, was mutilated for his crime of writing an anti-episcopal pamphlet. All the printed materials on religious matters had to have the approval of Archbishop Laud. Last, in 1637, Charles commissioned Archbishop Laud to go to Scotland and command that they cease their itinerant religious practices and to conform to the Anglican ways, which the Scots replied with the resounding no. And the entire nation formally made a covenant to have nothing to do with any Romish ways. Charles invaded and was easily defeated by the well-disciplined and fierce Scottish army. Charles was then forced to promise the Scots free assemblies, a free parliament, and freedom of religion. However, that did not last long, as Laud persuaded Charles to break his agreement with the Scots. Charles then called for another parliament, which became known as the Short Parliament, to raise money, or in other words, raise taxes to take another crack at the Scots. The Parliament refused, and keep in mind that he had dissolved them 11 years ago at this time in history. Instead, they presented him with even more grievances. He dissolved the Parliament again and raised custom duties, or what became known as ship money, and this infuriated the merchants. Charles was preparing for his invasion of Scotland, but the Scots instead launched a preemptive attack on England. Charles and his army suffered another humiliating defeat at the hands of the Scots. Charles, once again, out of funds, called for Parliament to return in 1640, and this Parliament remained until 1653. This Parliament became known as the Long Parliament. This Parliament was far more belligerent. They had taken one of the king's favorite ministers, the Earl of Stafford, and tried him and found him guilty of treason and executed him. Well, this had gotten the king's attention and forced him to sign the Triennial Act, guaranteeing regular meetings of the Parliament and promising that Parliament could not be dissolved without its own consent. In October 1641, a rebellion broke out in Ireland. News that the Irish Catholic army was butchering men, women, and children by the thousands had reached the Englishmen's ears, and this would poison the relationship between the two countries for decades. Now, before I go on, I must say that it is hotly debated as to whether this was originally supposed to be a bloodless revolution by the Irish or not. None can really say, but the fact remains that the Irish Catholics did kill thousands of people, which in turn would stir up great animosity in the heart of Oliver Cromwell. This rebellion by the Irish caused many of the officials and the gentry to march on London and demand that the king would do something to stop the Irish. On November 22, 1641, Parliament assembled once again and presented Charles with a grand remonstrance. This was to censure the corrupt bishops. The bishops are described as follows in the grand remonstrance: and the corrupt part of the clergy who cherish formality and superstition. This did not go over well with Charles. He rejected the remonstrance and brought impeachment proceedings against the principal authors in the House of Commons. The men Pym, Strode, Holles, Hampden, and Hazerig. The House of Lords told Charles that he had no legal grounds to do so, but he ultimately ignored them and moved in with an armed guard to arrest the Puritan leaders for treason. The 5 men were forewarned of the impending threat and fled to friendly Puritan households in London. Charles and his men arrived too late, and they just found empty seats. 1 week later, Charles left London to raise an army and intended to close down Parliament with an armed force to consolidate his power. The Puritan leaders felt as though they had no choice but to raise an army of their own, not only to fight against the tyrannical King Charles, but also to help them against the threat of the invading Irish horde. In July of 1642, the Parliament sent Oliver Cromwell home to his constituency in Cambridge to recruit soldiers for the oncoming war. Oliver Cromwell had contributed £100 of his own money to buy arms and obtained a vote in Cambridgeshire allowing the town of Cambridge to raise 2 companies of volunteer militia. On October 23rd, Cromwell made his military debut at the Battle of Edgehill under the command of Robert Devereux. The parliamentarians fought against the royalists in a gruesome and bloody battle. Not much is known about his role in the battle, but he did learn that his side could not win if they did not have better leadership and discipline. He also learned that heavy armor was useless, and the greatest weapon that they had was not the musket or the sword, but was the horse. In 1643, he was promoted to colonel and gained more popularity by being an incredible military organizer. He was able to recruit more men primarily from the dissenting churches, such as the Independents, the Separatists, the Baptists, and the Antinomians. They gained the hated epithet, the Roundhead, due to their short hair. Although Cromwell himself never joined any of the dissenting sects of faith, after he severed his ties with the Anglican Church, he still felt a bond of brotherhood with those who had rejected the Popish or the Romish ways of the Church of England. Cromwell always treated his men with fairness, and he paid them on time. He made all of his men exercise strict discipline in their lives. If they swore, they were fined. If they were drunk, they would be placed in stocks. If they deserted, they were whipped. He did not tolerate his men to pillage or plunder any of the civilian homes or property. He said that the war was against the crown and not their fellow Englishmen. Cromwell made his men train vigorously and continuously, and they became the best trained regiment in England. Cromwell learned how to retreat and to reform his ranks and to launch second and third waves of attacks on the enemies in the heat of battle, keeping constant pressure on his enemies. His army confused and bewildered the royalist army, and their constant reforming of ranks and strengthened continuous attacks on the enemies with their speed and ferocity and flexibility made them a formidable foe against the royalist army. Due to his brilliance in battle, he was able to overcome a previously unbeaten royalist army in the Battle of Gainsborough. In 1644, he earned the rank of lieutenant general and was made a member of the war cabinet. Cromwell served under the Earl of Manchester, who was the commander-in-chief. He distinguished himself yet again at the Battle of Marston Moor, where Prince Rupert, the commander-in-chief of King Charles, was defeated. However, after this battle, Cromwell criticized his commander, Manchester, when Manchester failed to take full advantage of the chaos in the royalist ranks to give themselves a more resounding victory. He blamed his commander for his lethargy and proposed that no member of parliament should be allowed to hold both civilian and military positions simultaneously. His proposal was accepted, and the new model army was reconstituted under the leadership of Sir Thomas Fairfax. The position of second in command was left open, and Fairfax gave Cromwell that position. Fairfax and Cromwell went on to destroy the last 2 remaining armies of the king at the battles of Naseby and Langport. Charles fled to Oxford, where he was surrounded, but managed to escape. He was finally captured by Scottish Covenanters and was turned over to the parliamentary authorities in January 1647. Afterward, the House of Commons wanted to disband the army that Cromwell had raised. They wanted to do it as quickly and as cheaply as possible. He spent about half a year trying to reconcile the Parliament and the army and was made parliamentary commissioner. He tried to offer terms which both sides could accept, but neither had agreed. The House of Commons thought that the army could no longer be trusted, so they ordered the immediate disbandment and hired a Scottish army to protect them. Cromwell thought that his men were being unfairly treated and left London in June of 1647. For the remainder of the year, Cromwell tried to find a peaceful solution for the country in turmoil, but the task was seemingly impossible. Cromwell and his son-in-law, Henry Ireton, visited King Charles twice while he was being held captive, trying to agree to a constitutional settlement, but the king refused. It must be stated here that Cromwell was no enemy of the institution of the monarchy and was actually against removing the monarchy and the House of Lords, and was against introducing more democracy to the country. He felt that adding more democracy or ridding the country of the House of Lords or the monarchy would invite more chaos in an already torn country. Charles was held in comfortable quarters in the Hampton Court Palace, but he would ultimately sour the ongoing peace talks by escaping to the Isle of Wight and taking up residence in Carisbrooke Castle. The rift between the standing army that had still not disbanded and the Parliament was still growing. And Charles took advantage of that while further complicating things by having negotiations with the Scots. Okay, I'm going to stop right here for now. I do have to admit, this video was way bigger than I thought it was originally going to be. I thought it was going to be a one and done. I tried to, at least for the history portions, to kind of piece it out to where it's not so long and drawn out, but I just felt like this one was just going on and on and on. And I still have more to say about this. Of course, we have to get into Civil War round 2, and of course the aftermath of the Civil War and up to the death of Cromwell. But you let me know what you think down in the comments below. And on the next video, I will finish up the life of Oliver Cromwell, and we will go back to the United States. And of course, I will let you know of what I personally think of what the significance of all of this has to do with the founding of the United States on the next video. Well, I hope that you guys have a good one. And again, leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. And not to worry, ladies and gentlemen, I have not forgotten about my ongoing series of why you should vote for Joe Biden. And so here is reason number 4.
Throughout his administration, mumbles and stumbles often make headlines and are mocked by primetime television hosts. But what is not widely spoken about is Joe Biden's creepiness. Sniffing children, inappropriate touching, and strange whispering have all come up multiple times throughout his presidency. But the mainstream media seem to sweep the concerning behaviour under the rug. Sky News All-Stars Rita Panahi, Paul Murray, and James Morrow exposed Joe Biden's creepiest moments.
Dang it, ladies and gentlemen, I am so sorry. Once again, I have failed. I've shown you the wrong clip once again. I'm sorry. Here, I will rectify it right away. Here's the real one I wanted to show you.
Vladimir Putin said last night about this authorization of American weapons inside Russia. He said the supply of high-precision weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Russian territory is direct participation in this war. He went on to say that this is the way to serious problems, and again talked about Russia's nuclear capabilities. Does that concern you?
I've known him for over 40 years. He's concerned me for 40 years. He's not a decent man, he's a dictator, and he's struggling to make sure he holds this country together while still keeping this assault going. We're not talking about giving them weapons to strike Moscow, to strike the Kremlin, to strike just across the border where they're receiving significant fire from conventional weapons used by the Russians to go into Ukraine to kill the Ukrainians.
And there you are, folks. I just wanted to show you of how truthful, how honest this man of integrity is. Did you not hear it? 40 years he's known Putin, even though that's highly improbable and likely impossible. But still, I'm just glad to present to you the truth teller, Joe Biden.